Hello students, this video is about summation. So, summation, this symbol here is the Greek symbol sigma, and in mathematics it means sum. Now you've probably seen this symbol in other places. They use it a lot in like sororities. They use the letter sigma to spell the name of their sorority, but it's just a Greek letter and they use it like a letter, and when we read it, we understand this symbol is telling us to sum, which means to add. So this symbol is telling us to add. Okay, so when we look at this here, this is telling us, this is the formula right here. Here's the formula part. And right here is the number we start with. This time it happens to be starting with 1, and it's adding all the way up until 10. Now, the letter that's used here, the letter of the variable, this one happens to be I. It doesn't matter. It could be any variable. We could have the sum from 1 to 10 with a formula with n in it. Or we could have the sum from 1 to 10 with the variable being x. Or we could have the sum from 1 to 10 with the variable being an a. Whichever way it happens to be, it means the same thing to us. We know that these variables I can just plug in. This is saying a equals 1, so I can plug in 1. And actually, I'm going to need to plug in all the numbers from 1 to 10. So first you have to plug in 1 for a. Then you have to plug in 2, then you have to plug in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And each time you have to plug in and solve and see what you get for your answer. So when you plug in I to be 1, we plug in I to be 1, we get 2 times 1 minus 1 gives us 1. We plug in 2, we plug in I to be 2, and we have 2 times 2 minus 1, we get 3. You plug in 3 and you get 5, and you plug in 4 and you get 7. So I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern here. Alright, so we continue and we plug in 1 and we get 1. We plug in 1 and we get 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and we keep on plugging in for I into the formula. We keep on plugging in until we plug in 10 and we get 19. But they didn't just ask us to plug in 1 through 10, they asked us to find the summation. What does that mean? Well, that means that we have to add them. So, adding all of the column of numbers, we find that the summation of this series equals 100. So I add this whole column right here up. I add them all up. And I get 100. So 100 is the answer. However, plugging in the numbers from 1 to 10 and then adding them all to get the answer, to find the summation, that's definitely the long way, all right? And that's not what I want you to do. When you see this formula and they ask you to find the summation of the number of this formula from 1 to 10, you don't have to plug in the numbers 1 through 10. We have a shortcut. And that shortcut is the sum of arithmetic sequences formula, which is that the summation equals the first term plus the last term times n, that's the number of terms, divided by 2. Let's write that down. Okay, so a1 is the first term, an is the last term, and n is the number of terms that you're adding together. So let's look at our example here. What we need to figure out is, we need to see if we can find what a1 is, what an is, and what n is. Because if we can find those 3 things, then we can plug into the formula and be done. So how can we find a1 and an? Well, to do that, we just need to plug in to the formula. We can see that the first term is 1. So if I plug 1 in, I'm going to get the first term. And if I plug 10 in, I'm going to get the last term. And then n is the number of things we're adding. So we'll have to count up how many things are there between 1 and 10, including 10. Okay, so when I plug in 1, so I can find a1, I get 1. And to find my last term, an, I plug in 10. and that gave me 19. Then I have to count up how many things are there between 1 and 10. So the number n, in this case, happens to be the same number that's on the top of the sigma sign here, but it doesn't have to be. What would the n value have been if instead of counting from 1, I started counting at 3? If I'm counting from 3 to 10, then I would have only had 7 things, and my n would have been 7. So be careful, it's not just the top number. Remember to count how many things in between here that you're actually adding up. In this case, I am adding up 10. Now, plug into the formula, and we get the answer of 100, which is the same thing we got from adding.